It's been covered before, but between like songs like that and your band with Ray and David William Sims, just the controversial band name, there's things that people have seized upon that really have not necessarily any desire for explanation, but want to extrapolate their own conclusion based upon those factors.
Being frank, I don't think I've been held to account, honestly, for being in a band called Rapeman. I mean, that's unconscionable. I feel like I've gotten a pass kind of on that, and I shouldn't. I feel like I should have to answer for that, and I have on occasion, but not nearly to the extent that I think is warranted. Like it was a flippant choice that we made at the time, and it's unconscionable. It's indefensible.
Wow.
And I don't think it's out of bounds for somebody to call me on it. I feel like that's a perfectly reasonable thing to call somebody on.
So how do you? I mean, I guess you did just reconcile. I was just gonna say, but how do you reconcile the fact that you can't change that? You can't make amends for it, right?
Yeah. At the time, I was somewhat deaf to feminism, and I was somewhat deaf to the arguments of vulnerable people, because of my privilege, I didn't feel vulnerable myself, and so I was fairly deaf to it, and that's a failing on my part. That's on me. And I made a fundamental error when we were during that era. I equated leftist critique that may have been slightly ignorant, but was legitimate. I equated that critique with a kind of right-wing puritanical critique, because they both seemed ignorant of our intent, and so I equated them. I erroneously equated them without acknowledging that the progressive critique of naming your band Rapeman is an order of magnitude more legitimate than a puritanical critique of just not liking to see the word rape. And my fundamental mistake was conflating those two. So that's how I maintained an indifference to the criticism.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent explanation. I think it's a shame because obviously the music holds up and it is great.
Yeah,
but...
I'm very fond of I'm very proud of the music that we made. I'm fond of that experience of being in that band. Ray and David are amazing musicians. I'm gratified I got to be in a band with them. Naming the band is probably the single, but also the defining regret of that whole episode.